Okay, so now we're going to talk about kind of what I alluded to just a second ago. So how do planners typically handle markdowns um, in supply chains? And we'll have kind of we'll have like an option A and an option B here. And these are two of the most common things that I saw in my limited experience. So a planner might say we have a markdown event for item A and it's 20% off. So if we had the same markdown, then we'll just carry that assumption forward to, we'll plan the exact same as last year, something very, very close within, 5%, and then that'll be the forecast. So that's one option. If an item repeatedly is marked down every year at a similar time, they might just say, okay, we'll just take last year's demand and it should be about the same. Or you could also say, okay, let's say we have a markdown for an item last year and it was 10% off, but this year it's 20% off. Well, since it's 20%, we're now going to lift the forecast by 10% because a lot of the time it can be assumed that, oh, well, this price to demand relationship must be 1-to-1, right? It must be linear, which
Right.
often, in supply chains is not the case. You can have, say you drop an item by 10% and the demand could shoot up 200%, right? It can be very hard to predict. So a lot of the time this will be a heuristic people use. And
Especially when you don't have a lot of data, like for, let's
mhm,
say, NPIs products, like, very new products that just was recently launched. It's very, very hard to know how the market will react to any changing in price. I mean, it's super challenging. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's something we don't really touch on much in this presentation, and perhaps there could be more in the future, but machine learning does offer some interesting solutions in terms of cold start forecasting. So when you have very little history, um, it can produce a surprisingly sound forecast, which is something, once again, these other statistical methods they just aren't capable of doing. So
yeah, absolutely.
yeah. So basically all this to say, in most cases of seasonal demand planning, a default method people can kind of fall into is, okay, let's use the same forecast as last season plus or minus a few percentage points. And of course they might, what's going on in their head is a decision tree, and they're saying, oh, well, if this item's going on sale, we might adjust, right? So we're making lots of changes based on things that we've observed in the past. So in a way, we're using our own, you mentioned like our own mindset to make these adjustments. And so we're going to kind of compare that now in an exercise to machine learning.
Yeah, and what they won't see any cannibalism. They won't see any market changes. They won't see
Mhm.
any trend analysis. Like they're really gonna miss out a lot of precious information. Just to give you a brief example, so one of our customers, it's a big ice cream company in Israel, and it's just a minor example. So basically, they have like a strawberry flavor popsicle, and as you can probably understand, it's a very seasonal demand pattern. Um, of course, summertime, demand soars, and in winter time everything goes down. But what was very interesting was the fact that they launched a new popsicle. So basically, one was strawberry, the other was cherry, and it
Mm.
turns out there was a huge cannibalism effect over there,
Mm.
and they didn't see it coming. Basically, it's as we said before, it was very one-dimensional. So they did exactly what you just mentioned. They took last year's demand, they added some percentage, whatever, let's say 5% increase, and that's it. There you go, their forecast. So the good news is, okay, it's simple to do, it's cheap to compute.
Mm.
But in reality, they created a lot of shortages and excess inventory on the other side. So yeah,
Right.
this is a good example. Now you can actually show us some examples.
Yeah, yeah. No, I totally agree. I think that's something that example kind of highlights the what can be a bit of the risk and the danger behind these very simple generated forecasts because then on like you said, on one hand you have lots of stockouts with your new popular flavor, and then you have tons of E&O on the other end. And so it just leads to, not a good outcome, essentially, not what we're looking for.